Hello, my name is Margaret Adele, and welcome to the end of summer 24-hour readathon. You know that feeling when it's mid-morning and you know you have a thing to do at 2 p.m., an appointment, a work shift, what have you. And you know that theoretically, you have a lot of time until that appointment. 5, maybe 6 hours in which to go out and do other tasks. But for some reason, you really struggle because, well, you know in your head you have 6 hours. It doesn't feel like you have that, and you're worried that if you try to start a new task, you won't be able to finish it in time, even though most tasks you start in that time you probably can finish, like that kind of feeling. So you end up just puttering around and not doing a lot. That feeling. That's the entirety of August for me. I work in education, so yeah, I have summer breaks off, and at the end of August is when we go back. Now, the first day back with kids isn't until the 23rd, and we don't even have our first PD, or at least the paras don't, until the 21st. So theoretically, I have 3 weeks every August to just do stuff. But it does not feel like 3 weeks. I want to start prepping to go back at August 1st. And it is a struggle to convince my brain to finish out any of my summer tasks because I already want to switch into school mode, even though I still have 3 weeks to spend. And as a result, I have been struggling with a reading slump because I keep thinking of, oh, should I save this ebook for the beginning of the school year because it's lighthearted, even though I want to read it now, but like, no, I should probably save it, like that kind of stuff. And I don't want to be in a slump because I sat down with the Pop Sugar prompts that I have left, the Pop Sugar Reading Challenge, and I realized I am not nearly as far in that challenge as I would like to be. And also, I am so close to my TBR goal for the year, but I move slower in that than I think I do because I have to read 2 books, but then I get one, so I don't drop that number as fast as I read naturally. So I'm sitting at 60 books on my TBR. I want to get to 50. Theoretically, I can do that, and I want to get to that before December. However, if I'm in a slump, that lessens the chance that I'll get there, especially when I have to get new books to get the Pop Sugar Challenge done. So, I am doing a readathon to kind of like kick myself into gear, to force myself to just focus on the one day, not think about the fact that school year is starting soon, just focus on this one day and reading. Get some new slots open so I can start getting more of those Pop Sugar prompt books, and in general, just make myself feel better about puttering around in a weird kind of mental haze, waiting for something that's gonna take a while to start happening. So, what am I going to be reading? What's my TBR for the day? So I've made lists. A series of lists. Yes, I am that bitch. I have books that are already on my August TBR or Pop Sugar prompt books I already own. I have review books on the August TBR, and I have books to get for the Pop Sugar prompt that would fit well in a 24-hour readathon, aka novellas, lighthearted romances, that kind of stuff. And obviously, I am not going to read all of this. My absolute record for books read in a single day is 6. And I didn't sleep, and I was low-key miserable and had a gigantic headache by the end of it. So we're not doing that again. I am going to sleep because currently I have my circadian rhythm to a point where I can wake up at the work time without feeling tired. So I'm not going to screw that up. That I am going to stick to. I like that my circadian rhythm is already back in work mode, so I'm not going to be exhausted that first week. I might stay up a little bit late to 12:30, 1 a.m. and then go to bed and just be slightly tired. I'm not sure. I think it actually might be better if I just wake up at 7 and immediately start reading in bed, maybe. But regardless, I have 2 books that I'm currently working on. Well, technically I have 3, but that other one I'm going to finish today. So I want to do NaCl, Eye of the Storm by Allegra Pescatore and E. Sands. This is a mostly fantasy with a sci-fi edge book all about a world that does not have any salt in it, and that doesn't sound like a problem immediately, but you can die without salt. So the only salt in the world are on these giant rando spires that have to be mined. And as a result of this, evil mega corporation has taken them over, and they're doing, regular evil mega corporation stuff. And our protagonists are fighting against them to basically get salt out to people. And there's a lot of other like little character arc things going on. I am about 50 some pages the way through it. It is over 500 pages, which is why I'm reading it before the beginning of the school year, because it's longer. But I also have Trial and Error by Oleander Bloom. Now, usually I do not read review books during a readathon challenge because the stress of reading a bunch of books in a short period of time can often affect my opinions on the books. If I don't honestly love them, I always get nervous that my negative thoughts were as a result of trying to read 4 or 5 books in a day. However, I'm not going to try to finish this book, Trial and Error, because it is so intense. It is the second book in the Caring for Your Clown series, which is a YA sci-fi with just tons of trigger warnings. So many trigger warnings. Low-key, not super thrilled that miscarriage was not trigger warninged, but I'll talk more about that in the review. Regardless, I'm only going to read 50 pages of that. I also have a short story collection on here, and I've done it before where like I'll intersperse a short story collection throughout a readathon, where I'll be like, okay, I'll read this one short story and then I'll go read something else. And then I'll read the next short story and then I'll go read something else, like that kind of thing. So I'm not going to aim to finish these books. I'm going to aim to get a little bit farther through them. And I will be doing my total page count for the day instead of just doing total books read. And then the rest of these, we have a lot of monster romances, queer romances. We got a historic romance. We got a novella based in ancient China. We've got a hockey romance, a Hollywood romance. Yes, I went with a lot of those because a lot of the Pop Sugar prompts were like a book set in Hollywood, a book based on a sport. I'm like, I know that those are romance subgenres, so we're going to go with that. So yes, if I read enough of these to open new slots, I will immediately buy books from my Pop Sugar prompt list and maybe start reading them so that I can get more of those done. But basically, if it's not a review book, an August TBR book, or a Pop Sugar prompt book, it is not up for grabs in this readathon, which that sounds really restrictive, but even that's like a couple dozen books easy. So I will find something to read, but I gotta wait because it is currently mid-afternoon as I film this. I'm not sure if I'm going to stay up late, stay up till 12:30. Probably won't. So in that case, I will talk to you tomorrow morning. And also I threw together this quick little chart. That's how you can tell I'm serious. Good morning. I'm already halfway through a book and it's not even 9 a.m. So we're doing really well. And I would have checked in sooner, but my communication skills don't activate until at least an hour after I've woken up. So the idea of trying to explain my book first thing in the morning was not gelling with my brain, but it like my alarm went off at 7 and I immediately grabbed my phone and like read for half an hour. And I started with Rescued by the Married Monster Hunters by Enos Rookbash. This is a monster romance all about a world with these interdimensional dungeons that kind of pop into existence, and one of the monsters of that dungeon, named Vessel, or at least called Vessel, starts falling in love with human culture and wants out, and through plot ends up being forcibly transformed to look like a human to endure fairly heinous punishment, but is rescued from that punishment by the titular married monster hunters. And of course, feelings begin to ensue, but Vessel's new form and the new identity, because he's pretending to be a hunter that was killed in the dungeon, is all on shaky ground. And of course, the big thing is what's going to happen when they find out the truth. And I am liking it to a certain extent. The only thing is the writing style is a little weird. It's just a little bit too awkwardly expository. And it's that thing where it's like, a lot of books have that awkward exposition at the beginning, but I'm over 100 pages in and it's still that level of awkward expository where it's like, okay, eventually you just got to accept that the reader either knows it or they don't and move on. And of course, this thing is only 222 pages, and that's like just above my threshold for a minimum for a romance. So it is very possible that I will find myself thinking that it went too fast or wasn't a good build-up because I'm very much a slow burn girly. But I do like all of the emphasis on disabled characters. In this world, a lot of the hunters are disabled because it is very commonplace for parents to bring young, ill children to them. And basically, the bargain is if you want them to give you the magic to cure, like the child has to become a hunter. Like it's a trade-off. Everyone who comes to the cairns to be healed has to either become a hunter or serve the hunter. So as a result, you end up with hunters that have disabilities that can be mitigated by magic, similar to modern medicine, but not cured. So we have a lot of that. I believe our protagonist is trans. I'm not sure exactly the magic. I'm not sure if the body he was put in was made trans for the punishment. Oh yeah, BTW, trigger warnings for sexual assault. Or if the hunter whose body he was turned into was naturally trans. Like I don't know either way. But I'm enjoying it so far. I will definitely finish it before the morning is out. I'll probably start a new book. I also, fun fact, found an audiobook for one of the books on my list, The Giver. I figured there would be an audiobook on Libby for it, and yay, there was. And that one, technically, I could probably listen to the audiobook all in one sitting, because with the way I read or the speed I listen to, I could probably get it done in like under 4 hours. So I might get up and do some house stuff, because again, I don't want the headaches. When I did my first 24-hour readathon of the year in January, I had such massive headaches. I felt like crap, and I don't want that again. So, gonna finish this book. I'll check in with you how I feel about it at the end, and then we'll move on to whatever it is I'm doing next. I have finished, and it is not even 10 a.m. yet. Woo! However, I think I'm going to give this one 3 stars. The expository dialogue was there. It was just too short for the level of world building and giant world changes that I wanted to have. Like, the end of the book, the entire state of the world, the society is different, and it's only 200 pages long. Like, my whole thing is, if you want the entire world to be different from the point A to point B, you gotta do a lot more work in building it up. And also, how the denizens, how the monsters viewed humans changed dramatically. Like, in some cases, they're like, oh no, the humans are the evil ones and we're helping them. But also, no, they were taught that humans were just herd cattle. So it's like, okay, what were you taught? Were you taught Undertale style humans are the real monsters, or were you taught vampire style humans are herd cattle? Like, it was a little bit frustrating. It was cute in some ways. It did that thing where it felt like the author was trying a little bit too hard to argue against bad faith critics, which I've talked about a little bit in some books, where it's like the authors have to overly explain things and make sure that everyone understands, like, overly explain consent, overly show consent, just to make sure that you don't get any bad faith actors talking about lack of consent and that kind of stuff. And it's like, you kind of just got to let it go. I did like all the analogies for chronic illness. I did like the idea of the ending, even if it didn't necessarily feel earned because the book was so short. But I've said this before, I am a long book girly. Every year I grow more and more like my father, because my father has this rule where he will not read a book under 400 pages unless it is by an author he has already read and liked before. He loves longer books. Now, granted, he also reads mass market paperbacks a lot of the time. So those books, if they are under 400 pages, are actually even smaller if they were regular size. But I become more and more like him every year, because it's getting to the point where I want to see even a low-key romance be at least over 300 pages anymore. Which thankfully a lot of the ones I have are. But now this also means, fun fact, that because I finished this, I have opened a new slot. Now, if I was a good kid, I would use that to pick up the review request that I have sitting in my inbox. But I kind of want to pick one of the low-key contemporary romances, because again, this is a 24-hour readathon, so those are going to go more easily. But for right now, I actually need to do the workout. I didn't yesterday, and I think that's part of the reason I slept like crap. Working out helps you sleep better, fun fact. And I just want a chance to let my brain chill for a little bit, then have lunch, and then maybe I'll set up a little nest somewhere in the house and just go for it all afternoon. I'm not sure, but I am glad that I have this one done at least. Another off the August TBR. At some point I'll have to catch up on other books, but we can do this. We can get at least a couple books read today. Hey, remember when I was like, after lunch I'll build a nest somewhere and cozy up? I lied. We're going to do the audiobook of The Giver while I do some stuff around the house. Like, dishes, laundry, that kind of thing. I need to get up and moving because I really want to sleep well tonight. And also this kitchen floor needs swept something fierce. So we're going to start listening to this. This is, I think it's considered a classic, a children's classic at this point, even though it was only published 30 years ago. And I know that because I'm using this for the Pop Sugar Prompt, a book published the year you were born. So it's as old as I am, or maybe like slightly younger. I think it came out when I was like a month old. But regardless, this is all about a dystopian world in which emotions have been done away with because they decided to do away with emotions. We don't want sadness or anger anymore. And it is all about one boy discovering emotions again, I suppose. I don't know very much about it, but I know it's supposed to be a classic. I know it's beloved. I know people were really iffy on the movie rendition, but what's new? So let's get the audiobook going and some chores done. Laundry folded. Dishes done. And another load of laundry on the way. All right, so we got 50 pages, give or take, of The Giver. Listen to, and it is going pretty quickly, more quickly than I was afraid it would. Audiobooks are such a hard sell for me because I can read so much faster than I can while listening to it. So it's like I have to force myself to go slower than I know I can, and it can get to be a little bit much. And this audiobook itself is kind of weird. It's definitely an audiobook that was created like prior to the audiobook surge of like Audible and all that. And it has this really weird, like, random musical interludes that are very clearly, like, warped, and whatever this was copied from had maybe, like, some technical issues. So it's a little weird, but I am liking the story so far. You can definitely see the signs of what would blast into the YA dystopian genre years later. Now I know Hunger Games is usually credited with making that genre explode, but a lot of the early signs were in this one. But this one does something a lot better than I think a lot of the other books did, which is why I think this one probably lasted a bit more in like the cultural mindset than say a lot of those later YA dystopian books. And that is, you can see why people would still technically want to live in that society, right? Like a lot of the later YA dystopian books, it's like a parody of itself because you're reading about these societies and you're like, there's no way people are just chill with the way the society is made up of. But in this one, you can like see like low-key some moments that would benefit people, and you could see why they'd be okay with this society in certain aspects. And it's a little bit more believable to think that this society was duped into thinking that this way was the best, because they are very conscious about like families spending time together. And there's all of these little ceremonies and things to celebrate youth. And they genuinely do try to give people these like assignments for later in life that will fit your interests. Like you can see to a certain extent why people are complacent in the society, because as long as the hidden stuff stays hidden, a lot of it looks good on the surface. Now, I'm not saying the Giver Society is a good one that anyone should want to be in, but I get why it tricked people. And in that way, this is why this book specifically has stood the test of time as a classic in YA dystopian when so many others have fallen apart. You understand why people are okay with living in this dystopian society. But I haven't even gotten to the part where he like gets his pick and things change. Like I am nearly 50 pages in. This book, this copy specifically, is 180 and not even there yet. So I have a feeling things are gonna go sideways very quickly, but I am gonna hold off. I'm feeling good. I don't really feel like I need a break. So we're going to go back to reading a book in text instead. And I do think it's time to do the 50 pages of the trial and error. But let's talk about that real quick. My thoughts on this book are very multifaceted, and I have refilmed this particular section so many times. So I'll just put it like this. The main character of this series is capital G, capital T, capital I, going through it in a way that doesn't seem to make sense to me. It feels like we are just layering 12 different kinds of trauma onto this young protagonist in this series, and I don't exactly see why. There doesn't seem to be any character growth. There doesn't seem to be any moving of the needle of plot purposes. It's just a ton of horrible things. And it's not even connected to the sci-fi elements, which, mind you, this is labeled as a YA sci-fi. But for the most part, despite the fact that it is called Caring for Your Clown, our interdimensional clown creature Dindette is basically a side character in all of Oliver's horrific suffering. Basically. Most of the time, she is literally pushed to the side, being like, leave the room, because Dad and Oliver got to talk about whatever terrible thing that just happened. So I'm getting a little bit frustrated. And also, trigger warnings. Okay? Trigger warning, dark themes, nothing. If you don't want to put it in the book, at least have it somewhere else. You know, trigger warnings on author's website. Whatever. Don't just say dark themes. That's like putting on a food packaging, warning allergens, and then not putting any of the actual allergens in. And yes, I will spoil a book to trigger warning it, and I am definitely going to end up spoiling this one and trigger warning it. But I'm just struggling with it because I want the kitschy sci-fi. I want the interdimensional clown. I don't need the gigantic amounts of trauma. And yes, it happens. Yes, it's a thing. I have foster parented. I know it's a thing. Regardless, it feels like this book wants to be something else with just a light layer of sci-fi slapped on top, at least so far. Up to where I've read, we have gotten a little bit more of the evil science organization doing evil sciencey things that would make it more of a sci-fi. But I also know that more horrible bullying things are going to happen because I guessed it. I caught the name. And it's like, why? You have an interdimensional clown being and you literally shove her to the side so we can watch contemporary YA grimdark. It's very frustrating to me, but this is a review book, so I'm going to give it the best chance of succeeding before DNFing. And I think if we continue to see more of the creepy sci-fi elements and less of the YA contemporary grimdark elements, I'll probably get there. But right now, it just feels like I'm watching a poor kid going through it for no other reason than it's drama to write out a poor kid going through it. And obviously, I know that's not what the author intends. The author is trans. I understand this is all probably maybe very cathartic for them. But for me, as where I am in the book right now, it doesn't feel like there's a purpose to a lot of the suffering. It just feels like it's suffering. And in a fiction book, when you are making up the suffering, that feels like something else. But regardless, I'll go way more in depth into that in the review if it ends up coming out. I'm hoping I can get through it. We just got to turn up the sci-fi elements a little bit more. Okay, now I am actually going to go read. So the next horrible thing I thought was going to happen didn't happen. It got interrupted and I was like, awesome, slightly less trauma. But then JK, the book makes it very clear that it's still a possible thing that could happen in the future. And then they had more trauma, but sci-fi based, or at least it was sci-fi based trauma that time. And it's such an emotionally taxing book. Like, I just feel bad after reading 50 pages of it, like emotionally bad. So it's going to have a killer payoff at the end. Because there's just something to be said for like an emotional tax, right? Like the more horrible things you put in a book, the more desensitized your audience comes because they reach a limit where they just can't keep feeling bad. And there's so little brevity, levity, or moments of joy in the book that eventually you're like, oh, another horrible thing has happened. Okay, another horrible thing. So I'm hoping for a killer payoff. But I think I'm gonna balance out my palette, so to speak, with one of my light-hearted romances. And I'm going to go with another book off my Pop Sugar Challenge and do Wardrobe Malfunction by Samantha Towell, I believe. Towell. And this is my Hollywood romance, all about a, bad boy actor that's just collapsed and he's trying to come back into his first big role, and he and his wardrobe stylist, like his personal stylist, have some sort of weird falling out at their first meeting, but then feelings. Like, I'm expecting pretty easy reading, pretty lighthearted reading, but who knows, I could be wrong. I haven't read an adult contemporary romance in, well, a straight one. I haven't read a straight one in so long, so this could be weird. Hello. So, I finished the book. I didn't mean to read it all in one go. I meant to, stop and chat with you guys like halfway through, but then I ended up taking a walk halfway through instead, because again, the goal of today is to read a lot, but to not read so much that I feel like crap. We're trying to ride the line. And I think so far we're doing well. It's after dinner and I'm still feeling pretty good. But I loved Wardrobe Malfunction. I was expecting to feel like just okay about it, because it was just supposed to be like a rando contemporary romance that I picked for a prompt. But the mix up at their first meeting, the thing that like incites everything, is she goes to like pin him for a pair of pants for the movie shoot, and he has an erection because she's hot and he's interested, and he accidentally jerks and she ends up stabbing him with a pin in one of his balls. And the minute that happened, I was like, yes, I will enjoy this book. And also, this book had one of my favorite character archetypes, which is Wacky Grandma. There's this grand character who is 80 years old, going on Tinder, making cocktails. Like, yes, Grandma. I love Wacky Grandmas, especially in rom-coms. They're one of my favorite character tropes. So I really enjoyed it. I gave it 5 stars. And I think it's supposed to be a series. It looks like it's based around like this group of celebrity friends, and they're each supposed to get their own, but as far as I can tell, only 2 of the series ever came out, this and one other, both in 2017. And yeah, 6 years isn't too long for another book to come out, but it is kind of long in indie book years. Like indie book years, that's pretty substantial. However, next comes, what am I going to read next? Because like I mentioned before, we want to stick to the not feeling bad aspect, right? Because I want to read a lot, but I don't want to read so much that I feel like I've thrown myself right back into a reading slump. So, plan for the rest of the night. Definitely finishing this. No problem finishing this. Even if I just end up reading it, or I can listen to the audiobook while I do other stuff. Although, if I am going to get headway in any other book, I probably should just read the physical version of this, because the audiobook still has like 2 hours left, and I can finish this in under 1 hour. So if I want to get the most done, I probably should just read it. And then I'm not going to shoot to get a whole other book read tonight, because I feel like that might be pushing myself too far. But I could feasibly take a chunk out of another book. Maybe I'll go back to an ACL and get another little bit of that read, because it is over 500 pages, so I really do need to take that. But we're definitely finishing this and maybe doing like another 50 to 100 pages of that. That I think I can do. I don't think I'll break 1,000 pages read in a day, but I have before. And again, we would rather focus more time on fewer books that I am enjoying and have a lot more to talk about, because in previous 24-hour challenges, a lot of what I talked about was, I read the book, it was mid because I only picked it because it was short and I am stressed. Like, that was a lot of my previous 24-hour readathon feelings, and I'm feeling pretty good about today. It does just feel like I'm catching up a little bit. I'm restarting my love of reading, or recharging instead of still circling that slump. But I will check in with you when I have finished a thing or read more of a thing, probably this. I am intrigued by it. I only know a little bit about it, despite how famous this book is. So I will be interested to know where it goes, even though I know it's a series. But we'll see how this one works. So this book was emotionally devastating. Was not expecting that, okay? I was like, it's a mid-grade. I'll finish it easily. But the scene with the twin, the recording that he watches, like, yeah, obviously I knew what they talk about when they say release, but to see it and the nurturer's mannerisms around it was fucking disturbing. And then a much more lower key but still emotionally devastating part when Jonas asks his parents if they love him, and their response, and you can tell that they mean it, and they have no idea that they are shattering that boy's heart. Like, it was so much more intense than I was anticipating, and I can see why this is a classic. It builds up so well. You get why this community was created the way it was, and you feel the kind of, we're just content with life. And then all of the emotions of life are added back in for this incredible dichotomy. Like, so good. I want to continue with the series, even though I never hear this book discussed in context of a series. Like, I don't hear people talking about having read the series, just this book. And I feel like I've at least seen it around, maybe heard something, but I can't recall anything about the next books in the series particularly well. However, I am intrigued by it. I do want to continue with it. And if they continue to be around this short and around this writing style, it shouldn't be a hard series to work through. Just in general, really liked it. It lived up to the hype. I am so happy. But now this leaves me with the conundrum. Do I want to start reading something else? It's not quite 8 p.m. as I film this, but my brain again is like, do I want to? I'm currently sitting at, I believe, 784 words between all the books, which is really nice for a day. I've read 3 books in a day, plus got another chunk out of another. I could go back and do another 50 pages of like NaCl to get another chunk of that out, because that's another long one. I'm not sure. I do feel bad that I only got 1 book off my August TBR today, and it was one of the easier books. But again, I'm feeling really good right now, and the whole point of this is to not push myself, is just take a chunk out of some of my goals, because I'm currently sitting at 57 books on my TBR and 96 books for the year. So I am well on track to getting 100 books by the end of August, which might be the earliest I've ever hit that goal since I've been tracking, and I've been tracking since 2019. So I'm really proud of that. I could very easily maybe even beat my record for the year, which I believe is 168. So with that in mind, do I want to keep reading just a little bit more? I do have a slot open on my TBR. Do I want to try another review book? Do I want to try the anthology? I will get back to you if and when I figure that out, or we'll fast forward to the morning and me doing a wrap up. I don't know. So, I read another 32 pages of NaCl, Eye of the Storm by Allegra Pescatore and E. Sands, and I am enjoying it. It is very high action, lot, again, darker than I was expected. We do have memories of graphic essay, so we got that going, but I'm quickly learning with Allegra Pescatore that she loves polyamory, and you can see this because in every book I've read of hers, the trilogy, the high fantasy trilogy that I read, and then the fairy romance I read, and then this one, there is some level of polyamory either built into the culture or built into the literal magic mechanics. Now, in the Last Gifts trilogy, it was culture-based. Everyone had grown up in nobility and had just understood that they were probably going to end up having to marry someone else and then having their true love on the side. And there was a culture that had stories of a 5-person polycule essentially among their deities. And then you have a bond of thread, which has their concept of the fairy king or queen having several bonded to them, either in platonic love or romantic love. And then you have this one that has another bonding concept where people who have marks, aka magic of different kinds, can each have multiple bonded. In fact, it's encouraged to have multiple bonded because if a bonded dies and that's your only bonded, you die with them. So you need the bond because it like stabilizes you, and the more you're bonded with, the more you're stabilized, but only having the one, you die when they die. So I love this because I don't like it when books make polyamory seem like a weird thing, especially when there's reason for it to exist in the world. I also love Catherine Moon did this with Written, the Librarian's Coven series, where it was group marriages were the norm. I just like that concept. I think once you start getting into more and more and more polycule books, it starts to get frustrating to have to go through the same, but you could love more than one person? Like, it gets frustrating to have to go through that polyamory 101 stuff constantly. So having it just built into the world to where it's like, oh yeah, this thing just happens. Yeah, this is just a thing that's in the world is so refreshing. And it is in every one of Allegra's books that I've read so far. And I'm enjoying it. But again, it's a little bit darker and I'm good for right now. I got over 800 pages read. I will probably come back in the morning to do like a full wrap up, but for right now, I'm feeling good about today. I feel like I've gotten a little bit more of a chunk taken out of multiple goals for the year, and I'm feeling good about my TBR challenge. So this did what I needed it to do. I don't need to push any more than that, and I'm going to go enjoy the rest of my night doing random other stuff. So I will see you tomorrow for the wrap up. And time for the wrap up. How well did I do? How am I feeling about it? So, I read 3 books and read 82 pages of other books for a total of 816 pages. I do not believe this is my record for pages read in a day. I believe some of the other readathons I've done were a lot higher. However, this is also a readathon where I feel the best at the end of it, because in a lot of those other readathons, including the one I did in January of this year to kick off the year, I had a headache. I was feeling kind of down by the end of the night. I felt really restricted. Like there were other things I would have wanted to do instead of all that reading. And this time I felt really good about it. I felt like I still got in some other stuff that I liked to do, you know, talking with my husband and all that. So in general, I am feeling better about that. I got 1 book off my August TBR and 2 more off my Pop Sugar Challenge. I am now well over halfway with the Pop Sugar Challenge, and a lot of the other books I have for that are also like lighthearted romances or novellas, so that theoretically I should be able to get done before, you know, the end of the year. I'm hoping to keep at it, you know, just include more of that in regular TBRs, which I guess I should have done. Like I should have started looking for that kind of stuff earlier on, but that's for later. Regardless, I'm feeling a little bit better about reading as a whole. I don't know that I've like kickstarted a new ton of reading for myself necessarily, but I like that I got all that stuff done. I'm pretty sure that I can get the rest of the August TBR done. I'm sitting really well because I think I have like 7 books read for the month, and it's not even the halfway mark, and that's really good for me, especially when my TBR is only like 9 books long. Although if I win next month, it'll be 10 books. And that's like my limit. I will not go beyond 10 books having to roll for. But regardless, thank you so much for watching. Have you done a 24-hour readathon recently? Would you try doing one? Have you done one? How well did it go? Let me know in the comments below. And with nothing else to say, I hope you have a wonderful day and a marvelous tomorrow.